headlines speak for themselves. Climate change will alter our lives forever. Climate change will bring unpredictable weather, sea level rise, social displacements, severe environmental damage, and major disruption to local economies around the world. There is strong consensus in the international scientific community that climate change is real. Man's actions are contributing to an increased warming of the earth, and nature has surpassed its ability to reverse the trend. Our survival now depends on us. Is climate change just another fashionable buzzword to scare us into doing something to protect our environment? Like the millennium bug, is it about creating hysteria, or is it happening?
There are countries in the Pacific that are starting to evacuate because of sea level rise.
The dry season, when you expect it to be dry, it's wet. When you expect it to be wet, it's dry. That is happening.
Climate is the average condition or behavior of the atmosphere over several decades. This is different from weather, which is the present or short-term state of the atmosphere. Climate change is a change in climate that happens over periods of decades to centuries. It can be natural or man-made. Man-induced climate change is actually caused by global warming, which is due to a buildup of carbon dioxide and other so-called greenhouse gases within the Earth's atmosphere. These gases prevent the sun's ultraviolet rays from escaping back into outer space. While the greenhouse effect is a natural phenomenon which helps to keep the Earth warm enough for human habitation, man's activities such as the burning of fossil fuels have led to an increase in greenhouse gas concentrations, resulting in a gradual warming of the planet and consequently changes in weather patterns.
Now what happened when humans began emitting more and more carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide through industrialization and running of cars, etc. They began to cause an accumulation of these gases within the atmosphere, thus causing the Earth to get warmer and warmer.
Global warming is already having a disruptive effect on global weather patterns. There are regions in the world currently experiencing changes such as increases in temperature, erratic rainfall patterns, unseasonable droughts, sea level rise, and more violent storms. A report produced by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has concluded that based on all the scientific evidence considered, climate change is without doubt the biggest environmental threat facing mankind. Where natural systems are already affected by human activity, they are even more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The IPCC has concluded definitively that climate change and all its observed and projected impacts will get worse if global warming is not reduced. St. Lucia's wetlands, in particular the mangroves, are being reduced considerably, further depleting fish breeding grounds and exposing the coastline to severe wave action during storms and hurricanes. The reefs, which provide a level of protection to the coast, are under serious threat from sedimentation, land-based pollution, and hurricanes.
A report that was issued by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it was issued in earlier this year, 2007, which identified the issue of climate change as grave and alarming.
Climate change and climate variability is a natural phenomenon, and in pre-industrial times, human interference was negligible. But records of weather information and analysis of weather patterns indicate that the pace of climatic change is increasing as a result of harmful human activity. The scientific community has now concluded definitively that planet Earth is experiencing climate change.
There have been changes, shifts in the Earth's temperature and climate over time or through history. However, it is really since the 1970s that we have seen a sharp and unprecedented increase in temperature. And it is noteworthy that the hottest years on record have been recorded in the last 14 years.
The whole scientific community has agreed that there is such effect as global warming and that we must do something now. Otherwise, we could get into a situation that by the year 2100, the Earth's temperature has risen by about 10 degrees.
Many of the projections for climate change refer to 2100. That is some time from now, and the tendency is to believe that climate change is something for the future. However, based on what we are seeing around the world in terms of more intense storms and hurricanes, sea level rise, melting ice caps, it is clear that climate change is already happening, and we can't afford to wait until 2100 to act.
There are severe things happening, severe droughts. We've had severe hurricanes like in Grenada. Some people have attributed that to climate change.
Efforts to respond to climate change generally fall into two broad categories: mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation efforts address the causes of climate change and attempt to limit or reduce greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere. Adaptation addresses the impacts of climate change, and an example of this is the construction of hotels and other structures well away from the high water mark to avoid damage from sea level rise and storm surge. Coastal and low-lying communities are likely to be severely affected by some of the effects of climate change. Flood mitigation measures have been put in place to protect communities such as Anse-la-Raye and the capital Castries, but these are likely to be seriously tested by the frequent and prolonged heavy showers likely to be caused by climate change. More violent hurricanes are expected to cause major damage to homes and property, livestock, and infrastructure. Experiences with hurricanes in the past have been traumatic. A prediction of more severe storms wreaking unimaginable damage is frightening.
When I grew up as a little boy, we knew that there was mango season, breadfruit season, this season, that season. But now the whole thing is confused and confusing. For instance, you have in certain areas the varieties of mangoes that normally bear late, they're bearing early. Those that bear early are bearing late.
Agriculture is one of the important